All right, let's jump right into this explainer of Jordan R.'s totally gripping short story, The Weed Killer. Today, we're going to unpack a fascinating literal journey that our protagonist takes and how it perfectly captures the inescapable cycle of poverty and the brutal realities of systemic inequality. We're going to be following a guy named Andrew. He's someone trying his absolute hardest to achieve some level of social mobility, just trying to move up in the world, only to find out that the game is basically rigged against him right from the starting line. Because here's the really harsh truth we're going to uncover today. Sometimes, the absolute highest cost a person pays is literally just the cost to survive.
So right off the bat, the text drops us into this high-level philosophical debate on recidivism. They call it the funnel. It's this widely accepted societal idea that once someone gets caught up in the justice system, they're just continually pushed right back into it. And this abstract concept, well, it sets the baseline reality for Andrew. He's a man who has already served his time and is now desperately, really desperately, trying to walk the straight and narrow by working a regular warehouse job.
Now, you might be wondering, and I think it's the perfect question to really frame our whole exploration today. Society loves to debate the morality of a criminal relapse, right? But what if honest work simply isn't enough to keep a roof over your head? As we'll see, Andrew isn't drawn to crime out of some sense of malice or greed. Not at all. He is entirely cornered by a system where the underclass simply cannot afford to survive by playing by the rules.
Society usually looks at incarceration through one of two lenses. The compassionate side points to the injustice of it all, the lack of rehabilitation, and how nonviolent offenders are just mixed in with career criminals. Then, on the flip side, the punitive view demands a much harsher system, basically viewing these individuals as mere assets of the state. But notice what is completely missing from both sides of this debate. Andrew. Neither viewpoint addresses his actual, day-to-day human struggle to simply pay his rent and exist with a shred of dignity.
Okay, just think about this number for a second. $2,300. To someone with a comfy bank account, maybe that's a minor hiccup, right? But to Andrew, it is a compounding, completely inescapable debt. And the kicker is, he's doing exactly what society asked of him. He is working a legitimate warehouse job, but those paychecks have thinned out because the warehouse is cutting his hours. The whole idea of social mobility feels like a total myth when your legitimate income is artificially capped, but your living expenses just keep multiplying.
Let's see how fast a tiny setback turns into an absolute catastrophe. It's like a giant puzzle where all the pieces are working against you. First, Andrew's transmission fails. Okay. He scrapes together $200 for a quick fix from a local mechanic. But of course, the fix doesn't hold. The transmission blows again, and now he needs a tow and gets forced into this predatory garage financing. For a comfortable household, a broken car is, a weekend annoyance? For Andrew, it's a catastrophic event that actively shoves him right toward the edge of ruin.
The internal logic going on here is honestly terrifying. Andrew's thinking goes like this. If he loses his apartment, he can't work. If he can't work, he's on the street. And if he's on the street, it's only a matter of time before he's back behind bars. Every single day, he feels like he's just one bad incident away from walking through a parking lot, pulling on car doors, and rummaging through trunks just to eat. The psychological weight of this is massive. It means that reoffending isn't really a choice anymore. It's a looming inevitability tied directly to his physical survival.
So if we compare Andrew with his coworker, Jeremy, we get to see two totally different survival strategies playing out in this exact same environment. Andrew desperately desires dignity, He wants his name on a lease, he wants the stability of a home, he wants to do things right. Jeremy, on the other hand, is kind of a rolling stone. His checks are garnished, he dodges obligations, and he just floats by on sketchy cash jobs. And the truly heartbreaking part? This rigged system actually seems to reward Jeremy's transient dodging over Andrew's desire for legitimacy. Because Andrew needs to cover that $2,300 debt to keep his lease, he's finally forced to listen to Jeremy's offer of a mysterious, highly paid house-sitting gig.
Well, as Andrew travels to scout out the location for this mysterious job, the whole city literally transforms around him. He leaves behind his neighborhood, which is characterized by sports jerseys and loud cars, and enters this highly affluent, historic downtown district. The residents here are trendy, they're educated, wearing fine coats and wool caps. It's a space of culture and wealth, and Andrew immediately recognizes that his sweatpants and flat-brimmed cap make him stick out like a sore thumb. He is an absolute outsider.
And to survive in this crazy affluent space, Andrew realizes he basically has to become a chameleon. He literally goes all the way home just to change into a plain black windbreaker, jeans, and a collared shirt.
He purposefully models his whole appearance on men who are, quote, dressed to be ignored. To operate in spaces built for the wealthy, poverty must render itself completely invisible. It works, too. He successfully blends in, catching a bus right back to the historic district without anyone offering him a second glance.
So he finally arrives at apartment 317, knocks the specific sequence, and gets let in by a maintenance guy. And let me tell you, the vibe inside is bizarre. It instantly builds this crazy narrative tension. The front of the apartment is decorated like a showroom, with fake plastic fruit and potpourri. But the bedroom he is assigned to, it's bare. Empty cabinets, a simple futon in poor condition. It's an absolute illusion of a home. And sitting right there against the wall is the centerpiece of all this, a large mobile machine hooked up to the wall.
Now, inside a walk-in closet, Andrew finds a staggering amount of cash stuffed in an envelope. We're talking more than enough to cover his rent and just wipe out his debts entirely. And the labor required for this massive payout? Simply pressing a button on what the maintenance man calls a duct treatment machine. He just needs to turn it on 1 hour past midnight and let it run. The totally disproportionate pay for such an incredibly simple task practically screams that something is terribly, terribly wrong here.
With hours to kill and pockets suddenly full of cash, Andrew decides to order a pizza. And when the delivery arrives, he spots a young man unlocking room 318 next door. He's really disheveled, wearing inappropriate socks, carrying this kind of dusty odor. But what strikes Andrew the most is the guy's trembling voice. It instantly reminds Andrew of the vulnerable, smaller men he saw violently victimized back in prison.
As he waits around for midnight, Andrew looks out the window and just observes the societal machine in motion down below. He sees the affluent, downtown crowd moving as this coherent mass, standardized in their fashion and their joy. But cutting right through them are the unhoused. They're pushing carts, moving against the flow of the crowd. He notes how the path actively just parts for them. The affluent society physically repels those who don't fit its economic aesthetic. It's wild to think about.
Okay, so as that midnight deadline creeps up, the truly horrifying reality of this job suddenly clicks into place. Investigating his room, Andrew realizes there are no open-air ducts in his unit. The grates have been totally sealed shut with magnetized panels. When he turns the machine on, thick, heavy smoke smelling of burnt plastic just pours out. Because his own vents are magnetically sealed, that noxious smoke has literally nowhere to go but straight through the shared ventilation, pumping directly into that vulnerable neighbor's room.
It's so bad that Andrew actually drags his futon out into the hallway just to escape the stench. Then, the next morning, the maintenance guy shows up with a cleaning cart and casually drops this incredibly chilling, detached line, "You didn't have to stay the night." I mean, wow. This casual dismissal confirms the truly sinister, premeditated nature of the whole job. They never expected anyone to actually endure the conditions in that room. Andrew was simply a hired hand, paid to pull the trigger on a chemical assault so the building's management could keep their own hands clean.
When Andrew finally leaves the building, he happens to follow that neighbor from 318 down to the bus stop. And we witness the devastating physical toll of whatever that overnight treatment was. The young man is coughing with immense, debilitating force, struggling to hold on to heavy university binders. Think about how often we all walk past invisible people in affluent spaces. It's so easy for everyday folks, like those uneasy bus passengers just staring straight ahead, to completely ignore the suffering created by these invisible systems. This young man wasn't a criminal. He was literally just a university student, merely trying to exist in a space he couldn't easily afford.
So what does this all mean? Well, it forces us to completely redefine what a weed actually is in the context of this story. As the text points out, weed isn't unnatural. Actually, scratch that. It's totally natural. It's expected, the way grass pushes up through the concrete. But in a highly curated, historic, wealthy downtown district, poverty is considered ill-suited. The struggling university student is the weed here, an undesirable element disrupting the pristine, affluent aesthetic of the building.
And that brings us to the title itself. The weed killer isn't about some literal herbicide or that smoking machine. No, it's a metaphor for the systemic eradication of the poor. The affluent management of the building uses vast amounts of untraceable cash to weaponize a desperate, debt-ridden man like Andrew against another vulnerable poor person. The system literally pits the underclass against one another, ensuring that the wealthy never have to get their hands dirty while preserving their exclusive spaces.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely haunting thought to chew on. Andrew achieves a momentary reprieve from his financial ruin, sure, but the cost was actively participating in the abuse of another human being. It forces us to ask, In a society where social mobility is entirely blocked and survival requires moral compromise, who is the real weed killer? Thank you so much for exploring this explanator with us today.